Okay, I think we might begin to roll into this session for today. So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the webinar. Today we're going to be talking to you about adapting the offer to accommodate evolving spending habits at airports. So by way of introduction, a quick overview to who we are and who we've got on the panel today. We will then be going into some of the latest insights from the Pragma Pulse Global Consumer Survey. And with that, really talking about key case studies and implications for how brands and retailers are evolving. We have a special guest to share thoughts on that front, which is very exciting today. And we will also be allowing some time at the end of the session for a Q&A. That being said, we very much encourage you to post questions as we're running through the webinar. Please use the Q&A function on the dashboard, and we'll keep an eye on that and hopefully have some time at the end to address those live, as it were, but also then follow up with any key ones that we don't manage to answer as well. We will also be sharing a pack of this, so if you do want the slides post-presentation, then reach out to Mike, whose email is on the invite, and he will be able to forward a copy to you as well. So let's get going into the session. Quick introduction about Pragma and Benoy. So Pragma Consulting are a leading specialist in commercial space planning and strategy. We help investors, operators, and brands really maximize the performance of their assets through customer insight and trading analysis to inform space planning and commercial strategy. We're delighted to be part of the same group with our sister company Benoy. So they are a leading global architecture, master planning, interior design and graphics entity that work very much globally across a range of assets, from aviation to amazing mixed use in retail. And together we provide a great solution for driving data-driven design to create commercially successful assets. So we're going to be sharing some of our insights with you all today. And quick intro of who you've got on the panel. So excited to be joined by two fellow colleagues this morning. Bit background to myself: I head up Pragma, been with the business for many years now, and over that time, whilst working across the whole ecosystem, I've spent a lot of my time focusing on the airport world and terminal retail planning across all shapes and sizes around the world. Delighted to be joined by Peter, if you want to say hello.
Hi there, yeah, Peter Farmer, Director at Benoy, focusing on the aviation sector. Some of you may know that I've been involved in the aviation world for about 30 years, and then very much latterly focusing on the passenger experience and the commercial side of terminal design.
Marvellous. Thank you, Peter. And Simon.
Hello, I'm Simon Forster. I've been a retailer for my whole career, originally in buying across the UK high street and the US, and then more latterly moved into digital. I joined Selfridges in 2012 to set up their digital business, and then moved on to cover areas such as marketing, and then became CEO. So my role is very much to bring a retailer's perspective to the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. Look forward to hearing your insights as we go through the webinar. So by way of intro, Pragma Pulse is a great consumer survey that we have running. It takes place across various waves, and each wave has 1,500 respondents. We ask around key topics concerning general consumer behaviour, attitudes towards the workplace, and particularly of importance for this session is travel retail behaviour as well. It's conducted in 5 key territories around the world, including India, China, the USA, the GCC, which is composed of Saudi and the UAE, as well as the UK. So it gives us a really interesting snapshot and insight into the latest attitudes and mindsets, and we'll be sharing some of the output in our session. So one of the first questions we ask people is, on your most recent trip, which of the following services did you engage with? And the top commercial services used on their last trip in the airport environment: food and beverage came out top, 34% on average. Interestingly, that was particularly high amongst those in the USA at 52%, followed by those from the UK at 37%. Duty-free then next at 18%. And again, interestingly, China came out top there, sided by 25%, and then the UK after that. And we can see that actually those from the US least engaged with duty-free at 5%, and that very much reflects the larger domestic market in that aviation space. Retail was then 16%. Again, those from China most engaged with the retail offer, and then airline lounges at 13%, with those from India being most engaged. And interestingly, that's quite a reflection of the amazing innovations that we're seeing actually in lounge propositions, both in terms of scale and design and experience features that are making that a really interesting market in Indian airport terminal design. So what do we take from that in terms of the strategy and implications? Well, on the left-hand side, we can see kind of how the conventional terminal model has been developed, where really it was all around processing, overlaying that with key functions, integrating that with commercial, and if you're lucky, a little dash of experience at the top of that. Really, though, we can see from the consumer mindset and the way the attitude towards terminals is evolving that the new model should really be all about hospitality, with that layering in some fantastic eating and dining opportunities, integrating that with opportunities for retail therapy, allowing space and zones for personal productivity, whether that be work or socializing or entertainment related, and the processing really playing that underlying sort of seamless function that underpins the ecosystem. So if we focus on prioritizing for pleasure, it really means we can enhance the emotions and drive that strong sensory engagement, and that gives us that platform for raising revenue whilst all the core functions are taking place in amongst the ecosystem. So how are brands kind of reacting in that respect? I don't know if anyone's come across this particular asset or knows what it is, but it is amazingly the first UK store of restoration hardware, the premium homewares brand from the USA, and really shows the ambition and aspiration that brands are taking to create an amazing sensory environment to showcase their products in a brand world, as it were. Here they acquired an amazing stately home in the Cotswolds in the UK, and not only showcasing the product, but are using that as an amazing place to drive engagement with their customers through quite a dynamic F&B offer as well. There's a whole range of different opportunities there, from more of the fine dining at the Orangery through to a wine lounge, a tea salon and a juicery, and an outdoor terrace, really creating that opportunity for people to socialize, to share the experience with friends and family, but also to demonstrate the product in sort of a natural environment as well. So really interesting case study of how brands are sort of pushing the boundaries of a kind of a retail and customer experience. Another question we ask people are, what are your motivations for shopping in a physical store at the airport? So the response from Pulse here was interesting to see. That immediate collection came up top. That was closely followed by price advantage, and then the convenience and the time-saving nature. Following that, we then get into all the attributes that really relate to the physical store experience. So the desire to experience the brand values, the opportunity to be exposed to new products, to share with friends, etc. Interestingly, when we cut that by geography, there's actually quite a lot of consistency from the different regions around the world, but we've highlighted some key ones here, where you can see the price advantage for those amongst the UK and the GCC respondents still was a little bit higher, perhaps with that legacy perception and awareness of duty-free. But in markets like China and India, we can see that experiencing the brand values had a much higher emphasis, actually, and equal to or above that of the price advantage. And really that reflects the pivotal role that airport terminals and the retail environments are playing in the consumer's choice and purchase channel opportunities, and delivering as good as or better retail environments than what people might expect on the high street. So the whole kind of perception of what an airport terminal is for is really changing. And with that, the expectations of what the store environment should deliver is becoming more and more impressive, particularly for some of these markets where new terminals are setting a new precedent for terminal retail experience. So the implication there is that we need to deliver that combination of immediacy and inspiration. We can see that the key motivations for shopping in an airport are driven around that functional convenience and speed of access to the product, but also that opportunity to drive experience and inspiration for the brand and the related product attributes. So, Simon, would you like to share some thoughts from your perspective in that respect?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think probably the first thing to do is to start off with a bit of a confession. So at Selfridges, we spent a long time looking at airport retailing and never actually did anything with it, which is probably not great news for everybody sort of listening to this. The reason why we didn't do it is not because we didn't think it was a good idea. It's an amazing opportunity to find new customers or even existing customers and engage with them. The reason why we didn't do it is because it felt, it's difficult. It's difficult to actually get it right. And we had a lot of other things going on. I guess the key thing is that we certainly felt that you can't just offer a pared down version of the high street offer that you have. You can't just be a mini version. You can't just be a worse version of the brands that customers are actually going to experience. So it can't just be about selling stuff. We definitely saw it as an opportunity to extend the brand. I think the key thing is with any sort of experience is that you've got to be really clear what that experience is trying to do. You can't just create an experience and say that's it. You've got to be clear about what it's trying to do. So from the image here, this is probably a good example where we created an experience to bring in new customers. That was very clearly the aim. So at Selfridges, we felt that we were a cool store. To keep being cool, you've got to bring in younger, newer customers. So we created a space for streetwear. And the challenge to our creative team was build something that's going to bring the coolest people. So after a lot of different options, they came up with a skate bowl. And the idea here is that we could invite skaters from the South Bank of London into this space, and it would create an environment that would pull people in. Now, I must admit, when I first heard about this idea, I was terrified. I thought I'd probably be fired for it. But frankly, if you're a senior manager and you're not worried about the innovation that's actually coming through, it's because it's not pushing far enough. So we did launch it. It proved to be hugely successful. The skate bowl, which allowed skaters to skate right over the top of Oxford Street, brought in a huge new customer base. And when people talk about experience, people would say to me, but how much are these skateboards actually spending in the store? And the answer was always easy. It's zero. They haven't got any money. You're looking at the wrong place. You need to look at the audience. The audience are the ones that have actually got the money. So this was probably a good example of creating a new experience, which is going to develop the brand specifically to bring in new customers. And if we go to the next slides, there are other examples of experience where you're really looking to constantly engage customers who you might have. Obviously, it could be new customers as well, but really to extend the brand which already exists. So the image you can see here is a space right at the front of Selfridges on Oxford Street, some of the most expensive retail space, certainly in Europe and really in the world. And we sold nothing from it, absolutely nothing. We created this space and we deliberately invited partners, brand partners or brands outside of Selfridges to pitch ideas, to come into this space, to create experiences which are going to be novel, unique and interesting, reasons for customers constantly to come back to Selfridges, because for them, it's not just about buying stuff. I guess the message here is customers won't look for experience, but they will look for products. So if you lead with product, they won't find the experience. If you lead with experience, then the customers will then find the product, whether it's in that space or after they've left the airport. And I guess this third point is really following on from that. The idea of using pop-ups, one of the key things for us at Selfridges was to ask partners to come up with novel ideas which would change. So you're constantly looking for spaces not to start and be exciting and then after a while become dull. They're always changing. And it's about bringing partners in to, if you like, apply that capital into those new spaces.
Brilliant, thank you, Simon. And I would encourage anyone to get down to Selfridges whenever they're in London. It always has wonderful programming and an amazing mix of experiences going on in the store. Next question we ask people are, what are your motivations for shopping online on airport websites? And interestingly here, up front was price advantage at 33%. Closely followed by time saving, and then the ability to click and collect. But interestingly and importantly, the ability to browse the offer prior to arrival, prior to getting to the terminal, the ability to find product information and to find and be exposed to new products as well. So the important message here is thinking about the role that digital plays in the airport retail ecosystem. And we have a framework that we consider called the purchase funnel. And it's fairly simple, but it just is a useful way of framing the different decision points and stages that a consumer goes through, from driving awareness of the brand through to engagement, conversion, the experience and satisfaction, which ultimately drives the revenue and the brand advocacy. So the important role here is not digital or physical. It's the role that they play together in enhancing that purchase journey and really thinking about, okay, well, what role does digital play in adding value to that purchase process, and how can it complement and support the physical purchase process as well? So in that instance, really, digital plays a fundamental role in driving awareness prior to arrival at the airport, getting up that excitement and anticipation, giving people understanding of what's on offer and what they can spend on, as well as elements of time saving and convenience, but also really using that to then drive the footfall to the physical environment, where the quality of the brand experience and the in-store fit out can then drive engagement, drive that upselling of conversion, deliver that 3D sort of sensory experience and strong satisfaction and customer advocacy. So interestingly, Manchester Airport has done a great job at redeveloping the terminals recently, and with that also making sure that the way in which the brands and the offer is communicated is really compelling, good use of bright imagery, succinct but engaging descriptions of the offer, and also using video content, being cognizant of the way in which people are consuming information and the channels that people are using to make sure that it's really whetting the appetite and driving that excitement and interest in the offer prior to arrival. And I must say, it's one of our kind of bugbears a little bit often when we're looking at the tenant mix of websites and airports around the world. Quite often we see that the imagery is out of date, or the maps are out of date, or there isn't really much articulation of what the offer involves. So we have this great opportunity to begin to drive that awareness and move towards planned purchases and increase the engagement before we get to the terminal. And one needs to think about how that's best communicated, which channels can be used, and the creative content that can drive up that excitement and get people anticipation at the highest level. Views on that, Simon, from a Selfridges perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point about e-commerce is well made. When anybody's looking to buy online, pricing, convenience of collection, etc., are all clearly going to be paramount. I think what I'd ask you to consider is that digital is way more than e-commerce, way more. So when we're thinking about our spaces at airports, we need to think about what digital solutions can we bring up or create for physical problems. So let me give you some examples. When we looked at customers coming into Selfridges, we did a lot of research to understand how digital came into that journey. And what came out was that at a minimum, 80% of all customers that came into a physical store had engaged with digital in some way. It could be as simple as what time are you open? But the brand, the first engagement with the brand that those customers made comes from digital. So it's important to then consider, how are we going to use the phone in people's pockets to solve some of these issues? So, you know, very much as Alex was just talking there, if a customer is coming to an airport, they need to know what sort of experiences, what sort of offers, what sort of engagement are they actually going to find out about. The first place they're going to look is their phone. So what is key as part of that journey is to make sure that the brands that the airport are supporting and the experience that they're supporting is available online, because that is the bit that makes people start to think, oh, I'll go and have a look for that. That looks really interesting. So it's not just about buying things. You know, a second point is wayfinding. So the most common question asked in a department store is, where's the nearest restroom? Doesn't sound particularly exciting, but most of the questions that come up is, where's the restroom? Where's that restaurant? Where's the latest thing that's actually happening? So the ability to put wayfinding into people's phones, into their pocket, is actually technically very straightforward, but not many people do it. So allow people to understand where all this amazing experience and innovation, where is it? Where is it in the space that I'm actually walking into? Third example, personal shopping. You know, the amount of customers go in and look at products in the airport, the amount of data that's online, which will inform them as to what that product is, what it's made of, what you can use it for, why it's an amazing thing to buy. Again, that could all be served up so the customer's got it if you put it into one space. And the last point I'd make on this is, again, social spaces. We're going to talk about this in a second, but if you create amazing F&B spaces, amazing social spaces, why don't you allow people to book them so that they can come in and then immediately go in there with the understanding that, you know, what's available, where can I go, where can I sit?
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. So moving on to the latter sections now, we asked people which categories have the largest opportunity for commercial growth over the next 10 years. And the responses that were flashing up here are actually from a stakeholder survey that we did across the ecosystem. So it was airport operators, commercial directors, and brands responding to this. And interestingly, ranking first or second in the highest opportunity was F&B outlets, cited by 64%, followed by experiential services, then lounges, along with duty-free and specialty retail. So I think the headline is, look, there's a lot of opportunity across the different facilities and functions, but where the growth is seen to be highest, as in those outlets related to food and services and hospitality. We also asked people which experiential services would you be most interested in using at the airport. So this is going back to the consumer survey and Pragma Pulse. And we can see here that relaxation came out top, closely followed by entertainment, then health and wellness, culture, productivity, with the basic functional services at the bottom. From a geographic perspective, I'm sorry to say that the UK were the least engaged with experiential services, but there we go. But interestingly, it was those from India, you can see in the orange boxes, that had the highest engagement. And again, this really is a reflection of the way in which the innovation of the new Indian terminals are being developed. It's setting a whole new benchmark for experience and interaction, and sort of changing the perception and attitude towards what an airport space is used for. And there's some great examples around the world of that taking place. And really it's showing how we have the opportunity to drive a wider mix of experiences in that commercial environment, to link that all together. So views from Simon on that.
So there's a number of examples, I think, of taking more immersive thoughts as to what you can actually do in a retail space. Now, look, there's a number on here. I think perhaps the cinema might be a step too far for an airport, So I'm not going to suggest we actually look at that one, but I'll pick two. Let's just, if we pop to the next slide. So here's two examples of creating social spaces and service-led spaces. So the first one is beauty. So beauty is the most common product that is bought in Selfridges and across the high street. It's a very, obviously a very attractive product, but a very frequently purchased product. So we looked at how do you bring service into the concept of beauty? How can you actually bring something which is more than just customers have to go and choose what they want and then buy it? So we introduced the idea of a beauty concierge. It's like a personal shopper for beauty. Customers can book a space, they come onto that seat, and they're then given a professional makeover by a stylist. The cost for doing that is zero. What the customer is asked to do is to buy the product that the stylist is actually using. What we discovered when we started to do this, so giving people a free makeover, but obviously with the idea that they would buy that product. The average basket value was double anybody coming in just to buy beauty. So there's no concept of needing to charge for this. People are spending twice as much by coming to do this. And again, if you consider an airport environment, the idea that people could have a beauty makeover in an airport, to me, is one of the, so this was one of the short lists of things that we were looking at within airport retail, you know, as a way of actually engaging people to use their time in a way that they might really want to do in that airport space. And the second one is the bar that you can see here, the Fendi bar. So this bar was created right in the middle of the floor and was designed to be a super cool bar to actually go to. Now, much as mentioned before, the problem with super cool is it's only super cool for a while. So how do you constantly reinvent? How do you, if you've got a space in an airport, how do you constantly reinvent it? So what we did was we built this bar, but then offered it to brands to pitch to take it over. So they might take it for 6 to 8 weeks, depending on what was happening. Every time a brand took that bar, they spent capital on completely redesigning it. So the physical, if you like, the essence of it stayed the same, but they created something different with it for each time. Which means that customers who are going through, if this was in an airport, going through frequently will always, or even occasionally, will always see something which is new and something which is fresh and a reason to go there. So the idea of social spaces, I think, was is fundamental to experience.
Excellent, thank you. So just to really begin to wrap up here, and then we'll get into the Q&A, and please do feel free to fire in some questions using the functions. But just a few bits of summary from these key learnings and ideas and initiatives for the future. So number one, this whole concept of creating branded hospitality. Can we imagine a world in the future where each store is actually a branded lounge and has an element of product showroom, product for sale, perhaps an F&B element to it, a comfortable seating area, somewhere to socialize, learn more about the brand, where really every attribute has this sense of not just being a store for selling products, but a store for engaging people with the whole brand experience. Number two is the concept of incentivizing engagement. So can we create a solution where the commercial contracts actually reward operators for retail theatre and in-store experience and incentivize people to get them to cross the threshold and interact with the product and provide a service element to that experience as well. The third one is thinking about creating community clusters. So how do we zone, plan, and design the space to create themed social spaces? Perhaps this is where I'll invite Peter to share a few thoughts from a design perspective.
Yep, thank you. I mean, just very briefly, everything that Simon has talked about before has been around for a while, but it's accelerating. And I think one of the things for us spatially, and from the design point of view, it's shortening the journey, whether that's physically or aspirationally from the passenger. So the traditional sort of processional offers are being challenged. Passengers want to get to that experience a lot quicker. So we're sort of flattening that journey, trying to get people to that experience that bit quicker, but then still trying to provide within those spaces that wide range of category mix and access. And I think one of the things that's the key thing that's doing is we're now looking at splitting journeys and not necessarily sending everybody on the same route, allowing people to disperse perhaps more quickly. And I think also what the key thing is that it's not just purely about adjacency now, and putting things next to each other. It is about a complete holistic environment. As Alex said, it's about creating a complete experience within a space and not just visibility and access to. It's a true complete hospitality space.
Thank you, Peter. And the last point we've got here is around direct digital to physical. So really around using these digital solutions to solve the physical problems and enhance the value of the physical space, and thinking of that relevance across the purchase funnel and the journey, to really add value at the right point, and enhance the quality and the revenue that can be driven from the terminal asset in that respect. So that sort of brings us to the end of the core parts of the presentation. We will open it up to questions now. So please do continue to fire some into the box. Just looking through the ones that have come through. I'll start off with one. So whose responsibility is it to drive experience in the ecosystem, and who pays for it?
Who pays for it?
Simon, do you want to take that one to start off with?
I think obviously the cost of it is extremely important, and when we're talking about experience, it's not just about experience. All of these retailers are businesses, and the experience has actually got to lead somewhere. So I think what's important is we've already established the experience has got to keep evolving. It needs to keep changing. So typically the experience at Selfridges was we build the shell, and then the partners will actually come in and redress it and create, whether it's a bar, kind of recreate that bar. Let's say, for example, for 8 weeks, the brand pays for that full redress, that full marketing comes from each brand. So the actual original cost of the physical space is not huge. But what is expensive, of course, is if for a brand to actually say they're going to take that space for a long period of time. By creating something that brands will pitch for, because it's in prime space, brands will then pay for that. So in every example that I talked about at Selfridges, the brands cover the cost of all of the marketing and all of the creation of that space. If you give prime space, brands will pay for it. If you give secondary space, brands will not pay for it. So it's important to kind of take that leap to say that we're going to make some amazing spaces here. Let's put a stage out there that people are going to want to play on, basically.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question we have is, how can you drive experience in a small terminal space? Peter, do you want to have a crack at that one?
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's tricky. And I think the experience that we've had is that it is still possible. It does, again, come down to what Simon's been talking about in terms of who pays the cost, etc. One of the experiences we've had recently is how do you introduce small operators, small brands into airport environments, and helping them hit that threshold of investment and gain. And sometimes, actually, in the smaller places, the airport has to take the operator has to take slightly higher involvement in that to help the smaller brands actually get that introduction into those kind of environments. And by doing so, that allows that excitement, that churn, within the environments, which has a wider benefit than just purely to the smaller concessionaire.
Yeah. And anything to add to that one, Simon? Sort of
Yeah.
condensing it to a small environment.
The key thing is to recognize that experience has a variety of different forms. So, in a smaller space, that bar I was talking about there hasn't got a big footprint. So using F&B to create experience is a great way to actually go. And that is something which can, again, change and evolve and become something different and allow you to use partners to redress that each time. The example of beauty, for example, a service-led experience can be something that doesn't need to have a huge footprint. So I think that what's important when we talk about experience is that we don't just see it as almost like a physical art form. There are all sorts of different experiences. We're talking about how the customer feels, what they see, what they hear, as opposed to just what they buy. Right. So that the format that can change. And what I would say is that, open up your thinking to what those different things could be. But if there's one thing I would say, which is very important, is, it's difficult to create something which is there for a very, very long period of time. Think about something which you can build and then can be redressed and changed as you go.
That nicely segues onto another question we've got here, which is the interest in the use of sort of viral pop-ups at Selfridges, and what was the average duration of these pop-ups, and would this be extended based on performance or perhaps made permanent in terms of the sort of role and evolution of that space?
So in terms of the amount of time, it very much depended on where it is. Obviously, there might be pop-ups for Christmas, etc. But what we would always do was actually have a time-based rule. So the question is, if something works really well, do you leave it there? And the answer is no. It closes down. It goes. Because if it's a really great space, then someone else is going to be lining up to do something to sort of like take that on. And so I think what's important, if you're actually running that brand or running the airport, is to realize that, what you're looking to create is speed and engagement and newness and freshness. And as soon as you stick on something which is actually working, feels like that would be an easy thing to do. You know what? Another 8 weeks down the line, another 6 months down the line, it's not quite as fresh as it was. So I would, I think if you're running an airport, you're running a brand, it's like Selfridges, you're running a brand, you need to protect it and make sure that if if it's a great idea and it's working, that's fine, but keep moving it on. And that will make sure that, you're going to have partners that desperately want to get onto that space.
Excellent. Another one we've got here, are there any examples of terminals that you think have at least got close to creating a holistically engaging environment and journey? Good question. I think one of the interesting ones that I had the pleasure of walking around relatively recently is the new Terminal 2 at Bangalore. Again, I thoroughly recommend a visit if you haven't been there. The whole concept was anchored around the essence of Bangalore being the garden city, and that sort of brand proposition was put front and center of the design of the terminal, with landscape architecture and biophilia being the real sort of foundation across which that whole customer journey was then built, and the commercial offer wrapped around that as well. So from the point of approaching the terminal, the kind of the beauty and the majesty of the different design, walking into an environment that has amazing use of different green items and planting, an amazing decompression zone post-security where you walk through a waterfall experience with planting, to really allow the sort of senses to relax, to stop, to sort of share the moment, and actually get people in the mindset for then slowing down, pausing, and enjoying the great commercial offer, which is then programmed in a good sort of linear way to maximize the footfall, with different pockets of kind of pause points, seating areas, F&B mixed with retail across that journey through the core commercial area before you then head out to the gate environment. So that, I guess, is a testament to benefiting from new space, large amount of space, but also having, a very clear vision of putting the quality of the customer journey at the heart of the experience, and then wrapping the functions and the processes around that as well. Peter, don't know if you've got any other views on good terminal experiences you want to add to that?
I think we'll just have to echo that Bangalore experience. It has set a new benchmark, I think, in some respects.
Yeah. Okay, conscious of time, maybe just one or two more to go here. So interesting one here in terms of survey questions and that sort of dynamic between asking people sort of what they want in a survey and relative to what they actually do in terms of behavior. And a good example here of being, you ask people if they want healthy food, they say yes, and then you ask people where they last ate, and they say McDonald's, which often crops up. I think you've always got to take, consumer insight with a pinch of salt, but also think in the way in which the response is then applied to the offer. And healthy food is a good example of that. I guess in the airport environment, a lot of the time it is a treat experience for people. Many people are, say, less frequent flyers. They're going on holiday, and they may want to more, indulge with that. But also very much people's approach to diets are evolving, and that awareness. So it might not mean that it needs to be a full 100% sort of healthy proposition, but you've at least got those options within the menu that allow people to have, a lighter bite, or be conscious of the calories, or the different dietary requirements, or even actually aspects like sustainability and the carbon footprint. One of the outlets that we've seen recently that is interesting is Let over in Oslo Airport. They're a great sort of local hero brand. And interestingly, on their menu, they have a sustainability carbon footprint next to each item, sort of over and above the calories, which is interesting in just the way that people are making their decisions in relation to the mindsets and the attitudes, and how that's actually influencing the purchase decisions as well. I don't know if you've got a view on the consumer insight from the kind of Selfridges perspective, and views of what people say they want versus what you actually give them as well.
Well, I mean, obviously the way any question is tilted will give you a certain answer, but I think you have to take all of these things in the round, and that the survey will give you a strong indication of even if people aren't doing it, what they think they would like to do, and so if you start creating experiences and food outlets which tick off areas like sustainability are going to be more sort of healthy, you will certainly find, I think, over time that people are engaging much more with them. So yeah, you won't always get a direct line which exactly says what I said and what I did is exactly the same, but in terms of direction of travel, that's probably that's what I always take. That's the direction we should be going in.
Excellent. Okay, well, conscious of eating into more of people's time, I think that's been a really engaging session. Really appreciate all the questions that have come through as well. We'll endeavour to respond to those that we haven't managed to yet. And just to confirm, if you'd like a copy of this deck, then please do reach out to Mike or any of the emails that you can see on screen at the moment. And in addition to that, if you have any further questions or would like us to talk through this content with yourselves or members of your team, be delighted to arrange follow-up times in that respect as well. So a big thank you to fellow panelists, Simon and Peter. Been great to have you on board today. Really enjoyed running through the session, and we'll bring it to a close. So thank you very much from the audience for joining from various parts of the world, and we wish you well on your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.